This is my 79th video on my work with OO gauge. See part 1 of this series for my reasons for getting into OO gauge when I already had a lot invested in working in N gauge and I didn't really have space available for a large, fully operational OO gauge layout. Also see my lengthy series on my N gauge railway modelling for smaller and more complex scenery and smaller scale trains running. This part, rather than being about things I have done, will just be a brief teaser about things I'm going to do, specifically with respect to some items that I just brought back from British model trains in Cambridge, Ontario, in Canada, where I live. When I was up to British model trains this past weekend, picking up my Hornby Railroad Ginty that Nigel had fixed and getting Nigel's extensive help with my derailing Hornby 8F, I also picked up these items. The scenic items chosen for specific things I want to do on my Hornby layout, and the locomotives just because they were very interesting old models that fitted my LMS prototype. Nigel got these models as part of a collection that he acquired, and given my LMS interests, he knew that I would want them. As he always does with locos that he's selling on, he gave them a service, including, I believe, remagnetizing their motors, and got them running nicely, so I was able to bring them home with me on this trip. They're an interesting little group. As you'll probably notice, they all have simplex couplings, which would immediately tell you that they date back quite a while to around the Hornby 00 days. In fact, each of these 3 locos was made by a different company. The Ginty in the middle is a Hornby 002 rail item, and so probably the oldest, dating back before 1963 and maybe to the 1950s. It appears to have been repainted with somewhat crudely applied LMS lettering and running number. The tender loco at the back some of you might identify as a Triang R251 3F. Triang sold these with the loco in its own small box and the tender in its own separate box. This perhaps accounts for the fact that they often turn up without their tenders. In this case, this has worked in our favour, as this example has been paired with a rather nice kit-built tender. I can't identify the specifics of the kit. If you can identify it, please do let me know in the comments below. This model too has been repainted and renumbered, this time with quite good quality decals. The running number 7895 that it features is, so far as I can tell, totally wrong. LMS 7895 was a Cook 6F Class 082T tank loco, built in 1917 for the LNWR and withdrawn in 1934. But I think we'll say that this is an ex-Midland Railway Johnson 3F tender loco running for the LMS. The tank loco at the front might be a bit harder to identify. You might think at first Fowler 4P, which Hornby modelled extensively, but the Fowler 4P had a parallel boiler, whereas this loco very clearly has a tapered boiler. Now, William Stanier revised Fowler's 264T design in the mid-1930s, and his revisions did include fitting tapered boilers, which Stanier pretty much favoured in all of his designs. In fact, Stanier revised the design twice, creating a 3-cylinder version in 1934 and a 2-cylinder version in 1935. The design was revised again by Charles Fairbairn in 1945, and the design was revised one final time by British Railways after nationalisation, creating the BR Standard Class 4 tank, of which over 150 were produced between 1951 and 1956. So, what is this model? Well, its running number 2679 would identify it as a Fairbairn tank built in 1947, just before nationalisation, but I seriously doubt that would ever have been painted in crimson. So far as the model itself is concerned, this is a Wren item, which can be specifically identified as W2219. And here's a nice picture of a boxed example of that. As you may see, Wren completely avoided committing themselves as to the prototype, just identifying this on the box as 264 Tank LMS. I think actually the tooling, when it was created by Hornby, was most likely based on the BR Standard Class 4. But I guess I'm going to pretend it's a Stanier tank running in the 1930s. although I'm not too sure that even those actually got finished in crimson livery. One final comment here on this model: it weighs a ton. It's probably the heaviest 00 gauge locomotive that I've ever encountered, which is down to the whole thing, chassis and body, being made entirely of metal, and thick, substantial metal at that. Anyway, I'll get these old models touched up a little cosmetically maybe. I'd especially like to remove the spots of white paint from the crimson tank if possible, and then we'll get them running on the layout in a future video. Now these items, a Will's kit for a greenhouse and cold frames and a small Scaledale ready-made greenhouse, I picked up with the idea of adding some more features in the garden areas in the middle of my Hornby layout. I'd like to put a greenhouse and maybe cold frames too in the garden of the white cottage, and maybe the second greenhouse might end up belonging to the Plough Hotel or to the cafe. Hopefully we'll see those items in a future video as I build the Will's kit and place the items. These items, a Metcalfe laser cut kit for picnic tables and 2 little P&D Marsh white metal kits for tables, chairs and figures, I bought because I felt that the cafe should have some outdoor tables. It seems that there really should be tables on that patio in front of the cafe, and I'm hoping the P&D Marsh items will fit there. The picnic tables can perhaps go beside the cafe on the grass, or even behind the bench with the seated couple. This is the school around the corner from the cafe. It was built from the Super Quick card kit. I'd like to convert the area behind the school into some kind of playground, so I'm thinking of trying to convert the grass surface into something more like dirt or gravel, and then I've bought, but not yet picked up, some playground equipment and child figures, which will hopefully bring the school to life a bit more. Anyway, that's it for now. As I said, just a little teaser. All being well, these items will come back in future videos.